I just lost everybody. What the hell's going on?
Maybe you should have kept with the $200 a month one.
Hello? There you are.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, you're fine.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ballnine Roundhouse. I am your host, Chris Vitali, and it's good to be back. Unless you're a minor league player and have to make, adjustments for some new rules. I want to go around and introduce everybody. Right here, we got Victor Rojas, the voice of the Angels for the last 10 years. Now the general manager of the AA Frisco Rough Riders. What's going on, Victor?
Oh, just chilling, Chris. Hanging here in Texas, having a lot of fun, getting ready for the season to start on May 4th.
Yeah, it's coming soon, huh? I bet you have a lot on your plate. So
yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, so thanks for joining us today and taking a few minutes, man. Down underneath Victor, we have, and we'd like to welcome back our very own AMBS for the first time in 2021, Kevin Kernan. How's it going, brother?
Great to be back. And I got to ask Victor, is that guy Trout? Is he any good?
He's got a chance. He's got a chance to be really, really good. We just have to wait and see.
All right. You have heard good things. Next to Kevin, we have our ombudsman, Rocco Constantino. How's it going, man?
Good. Especially since the Mets just closed out another series win, back-to-back series.
I have incense burning, trying to get rid of the stench of what the Yankees have done so far this season. And last but not least, we have former ball player and announcer, broadcaster, Wes Clements joining us for the first time. What's going on, Wes?
Hey, I feel privileged to be a part of this crew. I really do. I will tell you, Vic, I'm very jealous. Frisco was one of my favorite cities in the Texas League when I managed there. And then, of course, it's one of my favorite states for obvious reasons now. I mean, people don't realize why you went left Anaheim. I get it.
I appreciate it, Wes. We're having a good time here in Texas so far.
Excellent. Well, gentlemen, I guess it's about time for us to get going. So, guys, I want to talk about these cockamamie rule changes throughout the minor leagues, from AAA all the way on down. We know last year they were trying to institute some new stuff, obviously because of a shortened season, but now they're doing it again, obviously because Theo Epstein he wants to bring more excitement to the game by changing everything about the game. So let's start with the Obese Bases in AAA, made out of a new material. Now, I don't mind the new material if it keeps guys from slipping on it if it's raining, but it's no longer 90 feet anymore. Kevin, I know you're going to have something good to say about this, so let's start with you.
Well, I think I was the one who coined the term obese bases, and it fits perfectly. It takes away the 90 feet from base to base. The other thing I wanted to ask you, Chris, being a Yankee fan, I was just looking up. The Yankees on base percentage is 642, dead last in baseball right now. So so maybe with the bigger bases they'll get on base more, because that's how the nerds think. This is just another ridiculous. Wait till a guy trips on a base too. They're going to get hurt. Bigger bases. It's another example of baseball trying to not fix the problem, but create a new problem, unintended consequences. I don't want to go too long here, but it's just Rob Manfred opening up another Pandora's box. There's going to be one after another.
All right. Rocco, what do you think about that rule with the large obese bases?
I like what Kevin said there. It's, I wouldn't be surprised to see some people get hurt on that. It's, you have that natural instinct of running 90 feet to a base that's the same size your whole life. And, things are a little different. It's not as natural now. That can happen. It's just more stupidity. I have nothing to add to it other than what's going on here. When they started doing things, I was coaching high school softball 20 years ago, and they started talking about putting the safety base at first base. And even at that point, and on the high school level, it was ridiculed. Now we're talking in the pros and making the bases bigger, and it's another. I'm all for trying different things to see if things could improve or be safer, but I don't know. Changing the fundamental measurements of the game is not something I'm too excited about.
I couldn't agree with you more. And, that brings us to the infield shift. And we know what's been going on with the infield shift. You know, we've seen it since the Rays really started doing it a lot under Joe Madden. And now in Double-A, what you're going to see is allegedly, at least to start off the year, Victor, this is what you were saying for the beginning of the year, the infielders can be on one side of the base if they want to, but they have to be right in front of the outfield grass, correct?
Yeah, they have to keep their feet on the dirt just inside the cut of the grass. And yeah, I don't know. I get what they're trying to do. I don't know that I'm in agreement with it. I think the shift has been around. I mean, back to when Ted Williams was playing, they were shifting
Exactly.
on Ted Williams. So I think anything that you do to hamper the ability of the opposing team's manager from a tactical standpoint, I don't know how that's good for the game. I mean, I think the thing is, over the last 5 to 6 years, we've gotten into that mode of the all or nothing swing, and swinging up on the baseball, trying to hit the launch angle and the like, and thus because of that, the pitching has changed, a lot more strikeouts, and they're trying to create more offense. Well, I mean, you create more offense by trying to make more contact and trying to drive the ball to the gaps as opposed to trying to lift everything and taking the strikeout. So I understand what they're trying to do. I just think they're going about it the wrong way, as opposed to, why not change the hitting philosophies instead of, hampering a manager's tactical abilities.
No, I agree. I mean, is that going to change the way you approach, without giving too much away, is that going to change the way you approach fielding a team and who you're going to run out there?
I think offensively, it doesn't impact me, but from a major league, team, and even from a player development standpoint, Wes could talk about this even more so. Is I think you will be. Look, I at the end of the day, the whole idea is to score one more run than the other team after 27 outs. That usually gives you a W. However you get the run, it doesn't really matter. But I think from a contact perspective, you need to have more guys in your lineup that are contact prone, as opposed to the all or nothing approach. And I know Earl Weaver used to live and die by the 3-run home run back in the day with the Baltimore Orioles. It kind of worked out for them, but you know what? It worked out for them because they had some pretty damn good pitching to go along with it. So I think there may be some changes as far as how teams are put together, but I think it takes a general manager and a player development staff to kind of change the mindset from a philosophical mindset in order for that to happen. And it takes a while for that to happen. It just doesn't happen overnight.
No, I agree. And then Wes, that's going to bring me to you. I mean, like Victor just said, yeah, Earl Weaver lived or died by the 3-run home run, but if you don't have two other guys getting on base in front of him, that's a solo shot. With the pitching that's around now, what is that? I mean, are these guys going to be able to hit over the shift now that they're not all of a sudden in the outfield? I mean, what's your take on that?
Well, just to piggyback on the great things that Vic just said, this is just my opinion. I think the game has been hijacked, and it's been hijacked by a philosophy that makes the hijackers look tremendous, because they got all these shifts, but then they teach their hitters to do what? Hit right into the shifts, so they look like they're geniuses, instead of teaching the hitters to combat a shift. And so they've created their own game. Their hitters are doing exactly what they tell them to do, which is what Vic was talking about, is just yank and pull, and we see it all over the place. We will never get to see the full talents of this generation of Major League Baseball players if it continues. And what I mean by that, we don't know that if Cody Bellinger can hit the ball to left center. We don't know that. We don't know that if Bryce Harper could hit 350. I think he could. I really do, if he changed his mentality. The development of players is much different now than it used to be. And so when you watch a game, we've all seen it, where you watch a game and go, why are you trying to yank and pull this ball in this situation on every count? There's nobody in the dugout telling them to do different. So, when Vic, when we were playing, there was somebody telling us, use the whole field. If somebody's going to play you on the left side of second base, hit the ball the right side. On and on. I mean, I go on for days, but
Sure.
I mean, my personal opinion is they have hijacked the game to make themselves look good. And until personnel has changed, it's not going to fix itself on its own.
No, I agree. But I mean, do you think, an organizational philosophy like that, I mean, is that going to change unless they start seeing declining attendance, losing interest in the game? Do you think that's actually going to happen with it? I mean, do you think these rule changes are going to do enough to bring more attention to the game?
No, I don't think the rule change is going to do anything except make the core baseball fan even more upset with the game. They have this game has been passed on from generation to generation, from uncles who took me to a baseball game to me who took my nieces and nephews to games. That's how it's been transferred in families for a century. And it's going to stop happening because the core baseball fan who has supported baseball for centuries has been alienated, in my opinion. So it's not going to fix itself unless owners start waking up, and it's solely on the owners. It's not on the GMs. It's not their fault. They got hired.
Yeah.
It's not on the minor league staff. They got hired by the GM. It's on owners.
Well, I agree. And I mean, the thing is that the way that kids are being taught at a youth level now? I know when Rocco and I were 10, 11 years old, they would teach us, go with the pitch, hit it the other way. Just, play baseball. And I don't know, I don't have a kid that plays baseball, so I don't know if that's what's going on in youth leagues now, or if they're just, kind of preaching this home run or nothing nonsense. Kevin, you might know better than me, so I'll ask you.
Yeah, across the board, they don't know what they're doing. They're over nerding, There's no. It's really, they're basically giving the finger to the fans. They don't care about the fans, and it's right in front of them. That's what kills me. I watched a game. It was today actually. Joey Wendell got up against Cole, shortened up his swing, singled the center, and then then he scored on a double in the gap. That's baseball. We all love that. And then what happens in the ninth inning? He gets up and a pitch that he can yank, he yanks. That's baseball. Hits a home run, gives him a 2-run lead. I'm going to disagree with Wes here on one point. I hate the GMs. It's the GMs. The GMs are telling the owners what to do. The owners are just dopes looking at their big paycheck, big money, payroll. It's the GMs. Theo created a lot of these problems. Now he's going to solve them. I mean, what's next with these with the infielders? Being on one side, it reminds me of like third grade when you picked a team, then you picked the fat kid, you put him over there in the corner where he couldn't do anything. It's baseball. You're supposed to be able to field your position. The GMs have created this by making themselves look smart, creating too many levels of assistant GM, and all these other guys. There's always a guy in charge, the president of the team, and then there's a GM. The GMs have created all this, and until they stop it, till the fans stop going, it's not going to change. The problem is the fans love the game so much they'll go. Mookie Betts, the weekend that Mookie Betts had, making great plays.
Yeah, that was
that's
unbelievable.
baseball. Baseball really can't kill itself, even though it's trying. The gun is to the head every day. Rob Manfred's pulling the trigger every day. But, it's almost like that scene, from the Vietnam movie where you...
The Deer Hunter.
Deer Hunter. It's the scene from Deer Hunter. He's getting the lucky click. But sooner or later, it's not going to be the lucky click.
Interesting.
Yeah. Hey, just on the heels of what Kevin said in regards to the GM, and I call it spreadsheet talk. And this new, and it started with Theo in Boston, but the new evolution of the general manager and the like, and because they've become, unfortunately for the most part, white males out of Ivy League type of schools. Because of their education, they are capable of speaking ownership language at that level. Most of these owners are billionaires, multi-billionaires, and there's a reason they got there is because they understand the micro and the macro of the economics of the game, and so there's a connectivity between the two, and that's why I think and of course in anything, whether it's baseball or sports or anything, everything's copycat, right? You see one team have a little bit of success or moderate success, and then everyone thinks that that's the way they have to do things. So everything starts to trend that way. I think eventually it'll have to start trending back to the medium as well. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's the philosophy, and I love, and I know we're kind of going in a different direction when we talk about the game itself. It's white and it's old. The demographic of Major League Baseball is white and old, and if you're trying to continue to try to get your tentacles back into the grassroots level at the lowest levels of the minor leagues in the smallest towns across America, you're going to really have to put forth the effort with this One Baseball initiative that Major League Baseball has kind of put forth by basically taking away, stripping 40 minor league teams and trying to streamline everything with Team USA at the collegiate level, at the amateur level, and so on and so forth. I don't know how much of that will have an impact. And we may not even see the impact of this One Baseball for 10 to 15 years. It's not going to be immediate. I think at the end of the day, you have to get back to the focus on the field, making contact, hitting and running, putting the guys in play. And if you happen to hit a home run, then you hit a home run, and so be it. But the way the game is played today, and it's not just on the offensive side. I mean, it's on the pitching side
Absolutely.
of things. And I've called games for 18 years, and from my first year in the big leagues with the Diamondbacks in 03 to last year with the Angels, the game has changed dramatically. And I go back to the pitching side of things where it's the maximum effort. Throw everything as hard as possible. It doesn't from the very first pitch. You know, those Max Scherzers of the world, the Justin Verlanders of the world, those guys are few and far between. That's yesterday's news. Guys that when JV got to the big leagues, you know, he was 96, 97 in the first 4 or 5 innings, and he had 97, 98, 99 in the middle of the late innings because he was saving something in the tank. That's gone. You see guys throwing strikeout, wipeout sliders on a 1-0 count. I mean, pitches that are never even in the strike zone trying to get guys to chase. And that's why pitch counts have gone up. That's why that 100 pitch count and guys are looking over their shoulder in the 4th or 5th inning to come out as a starting pitcher is because they're done, because they're conditioned that way from a player development standpoint. There's no checks and balances. So I agree with Kevin from the GA, from the hierarchy standpoint, the GM ownership standpoint. This mindset from the GM as to from a philosophical standpoint has to change. The way you really manage a roster, manage your player development system, that has to change. And you're right, Theo started it all. And last year, I think he's the one I was talking about. You know, he was taking blame, and it needs to change back. But you know what? You cashed all the checks. You didn't have a problem playing that game, and now we've taken the game a different direction. And now you want to cash another check from Major League Baseball to try to turn things back around. So it's kind of interesting.
Well, just to follow up Vic, what he's talking about, you know, when Vic's talking about wipeout sliders in the first inning on an 0-1 count, it makes me think of Greinke, who just threw, right? And he flips it up there. And he's flipping it up there, the same pitch, he'll throw a breaking ball 2 or 3 different speeds. So we know that pitching still can work in 2021 in the major leagues. That art, for some reason, has been thrown aside, and it's almost like you get the sense that when Greinke's doing what he's doing, well, he's just an anomaly. I mean, the whole staff could never do that. They don't have the pitchability that they used to. Well, I mean, obviously, I think Victor and everybody on this that we're talking right now disagree with that mentality.
Absolutely.
But to go to the bigger bases, if I may, nobody ever stops to say, why are you going to have a bigger base? In other words, you started a fire. So rather to figure out how the fire started, let's try to do something else to fix the fire that we started rather than figuring out why the fire started. What is the problem? They want to steal more bases?
Right.
If that's what you want to do, then that's simple. You get a roster that has some speed, that has guys that can steal bases. It's that simple. It's not a difficult task to put together a baseball team, but to make a base bigger because you want more stolen bases is ridiculous.
Yeah.
These guys aren't any slower than guys 10 years ago used to be.
They just don't have the base running mentality. I mean, and add in the oven mitt that makes their hand this much longer. You know,
yeah, it's not
about 85 feet between bases at that point.
These hitters are only doing what they hear is okay to do and what they are told to do. To suggest that these hitters can't hit and run is ridiculous. Of course they can. These guys are as talented as players that we've ever seen. Problem is we don't get to see all their talents because they have been condensed into a mentality of hit the ball as far as you can, no matter what the count is. And then, of course, they added the new baseball a couple of years ago. And we know why they added the new baseball to make, like I said, them look good for telling them to swing out of their, you know what?
No,
I have a couple of things real quick, Chris, and I don't want to, take over here. My first podcast with you guys and jumping in, but it's interesting because of the base stealing. I have two things that I want to bring up. The base stealing and then the deprogramming of big league players. The interesting thing for me, I've never claimed to be a really smart guy. I'm a very logical individual, but I'm not book smart. I never got my college education. It's worked out fairly well for me. I've made some pretty decent decisions in my lifetime. But the idea of, and again, it's the philosophical standpoint that when everything started to shift to try to lift and separate on everything, the all or nothing type of approach, that was okay. Like, we're okay with you making an out, trying to swing for a home run on the off chance you hit a home run. So on a very good, player, 30 times out of 600 at bats, or 35 times, or 40 times, however the number is, out of 600 at bats, and those players are few and far between. We're okay with that. We're okay if you give up the out, if you will, to do that. But God forbid you give up an out, sacrificing a person in the scoring position, especially with the new extra inning rules. God forbid you give away an out trying to steal a base. And now this is what we're getting back to. Let's widen the base to try to encourage stolen bases and add more action to the game. Well, it's because, and it leads me to my second point, this is how they're programmed. The deprogramming of players needs to start happening. And it's one of the things that, as I went through that interview process with the Angels for the GM job last fall, it's one of the things I brought up. Guys at the major league level, and this is just my perception of watching games on a daily basis, don't have a feel for the game anymore. Very few guys know instinctually where to go on cutoffs when a ball's hitting the gap. They have to look from a card in their back pocket or a card in their hat where to be positioned based on, one, your own pitcher who's on the mound, and two, a big league hitter that has a lot of track record, and basically how we're going to approach him from a pitching standpoint, and what he's done historically as a player. The only time I can see where you need a card is a young kid just comes up, nobody knows who he is, he's done minor, doesn't have a track record, but there's no feel for the game. I mean, you see guys not knowing where to go or where to throw the ball on cutoffs. They don't know the infield fly rule. Jeff Bannister had a situation years ago as a manager of the Texas Rangers, and did not understand. There was a play at third base, and a runner left, and he was tagged out. He just didn't understand for whatever reason. Maybe it was a mind block at that point. But it's sad to see that there's no instincts anymore as far as the game is concerned. The great ones are always going to have it. I'm talking about everybody else. I'm talking about the mere mortals, not the Trouts and those guys. That's a different level. I'm talking about everyone else that kind of falls into that category. It's a shame.
No, I agree with you. And, you talk about the feel and what these guys don't have. That's going to bring me to what's happening in the Atlantic League in the second half of this year. And obviously, the mound has been 60 feet, 6 inches away since what, 1893, I want to say. Not anymore. These guys are going to have to pitch and I mean, 61 feet, 6 inches. That's a horrible number. Kevin, I know you believe that. What do you think that's going to do to these guys? What do you think it's going to do to the pitching? You know, I mean, they say it's going to make more offense, but you brought up a great point in your story the other day. That's an extra, if they can master that changeup from an extra foot back, these guys are going to look like idiots. So Kevin, I want to start with you and see what you think about that. This will probably be our big final thought thing.
Well, it could go either way. And even though I do know everything, and I'm America's most beloved sports writer, I do call and ask people. So I reached out to some of my really good baseball people who know the game way better than I do, like a pitcher, a fielder, a hitter. So I spoke to these guys, and I got a couple different things here. And one of them I want to mention is that teams have become so mechanized, and by that I mean all they do is measurements. Like I asked a scout, I said, "What'd you notice about?" Because I had a sense about the Yankees screwing up early, and I said, "What'd you see at spring training?" He says, "All they do is measure things." So again, that gets back to not having a feel. So they're measuring things. So they think that this new fancy measurement can come out 61 feet 6 inches. And here's the other thing that's going to happen. These guys don't have command now because they're all driveline pitchers. They're just throwing the hell out of the ball. Or how about you, Darvish? He throws nothing but breaking balls to Kershaw the other day and walks him. How in the world do you not throw a fastball? How do you not be getting his face as a catcher and say, come on? But that's you, Darvish. I'm not shocked by that. So by 61 feet 6 inches, and I'll leave it short now. I'll make it short. I'll make it shorter than the old pitching thing. They're gonna lose command. They're gonna throw more balls. Hitters are going to take more pitches, and what's going to happen? The games are going to be longer. So it's going to ruin their whole idea of shortening the game. And I hate to make it so simple, but the big problem with baseball is the people in charge don't know baseball. And the second thing that they don't do, and somebody very smart told me this, they say, Kevin, you don't understand. They don't watch games from Manfred on out. And then even some of the GMs, they don't watch a whole game. They watch the highlights. They watch snippets. So they don't understand how bad it is. So this is just another, unintended consequence. And like Wes said, they started a fire. They're burning down the building. The building's burning down. Instead of calling the fire department and getting some water on the fire, what they're doing is they're adding gasoline in small segments by making all these rule changes. It's getting worse and worse. I have no hope for this leadership in baseball right now and the last thing I'll say is it's time to make a third league that you call it the real baseball league. It's not going to have the stars of Major League Baseball, but it's going to have baseball players. People will go see baseball players. If you build it, they will come.
Well, I agree with you. Rocco, I haven't heard from you in a minute. What do you think about this 61 feet 6 inch thing?
My first thought on that was the pitching injury. Injuries are going up. There's all these issues with pitchers. There's never been an answer with that. Elbow problems, shoulder problems. Now you're going to move it back a foot. I don't think it's something that's feasible at any point for the, affiliated minor leagues or major league level. It's a waste of time to me. And I have nothing more to add than everything Kevin said.
You seem really pleased with this.
It makes no sense whatsoever on so many levels.
It's almost so stupid you can't believe they're doing it.
Right.
Really
I can't believe it. I mean, it's bizarre to me. I just don't. If you played baseball your entire life and then all of a sudden that's just like, all of a sudden now we're going to change the ball to an actual golf ball as opposed to what you call the Super Bowl now. So Wes, what's your thought on this? I mean, 61 feet 6 inches. It just doesn't sound as sexy as 60 foot 6, does it?
I'll just be honest. When I heard it, I had to read it again. And then I called somebody that is in the game and I said, is this true? And then I sent Kevin a direct message and said this, and he said, yeah, I wrote about it. Here's what I think about it. I mean, I think it's just one word, ridiculous. There's nothing about it that makes any sense whatsoever. The only thing that you can, if you've been in this game, as long as we all have been in this game, the only thing it makes you think of is that owners.
That's exactly.
That's actually what it makes you think of.
That's exactly what it makes you feel like. You just
Right.
out of your chair.
That was good.
That was awesome.
That couldn't have gone any better.
But it just makes you think that they feel that these hitters don't have the ability to hit pitching now. That's what I mean. That's all it makes me think. It's like, are you out of your mind? Do you think that these current major league players don't have the abilities that the previous century of players did? I mean, it's insulting. And quite frankly, the players should be insulted by this. These players are being used as science projects, in my opinion. I will piggyback what Vic said. When you have a card that you give players, and I'm talking about everybody on the field, I'm talking about a catcher, in a middle of a tense situation in the bottom of the 8th inning, that pulls out a card to say, what pitch do I put down now? And then at the same time, a pitcher's doing the same thing. And oh, by the way, all of your outfielders done the same thing. Now, once you start, the less responsibility you give any athlete, not just baseball, but in any sport, the less you can expect of them. And just like Vic said, they have deprogrammed what used to be a constant in every player that ever reached AA or AAA. With all the learning that they got, it was in their computer. Their computer has been wiped out. It's been wiped out. And there is no fun.
Let me just add real quick. Let me just say, because I think that's a great point. I never thought of that. But they're doing the same thing to the players that they did to the managers. How they erased the memory cards of the managers, and now they're doing to the players. That's a really good point.
And well, the thing of it is too, Kevin and Wes, is that they are leaning on the analytics. And I listen, I love numbers, and I like looking at them, and I like understanding it. But until the analytics can adapt in real time to the circumstances at hand, all they are is a starting point. They're a guideline for the beginning of a game. If they can't adjust based on the personnel and what's happening in the game, then they're meaningless. Because, and to Wes's point, you get a catcher who's looking at his wrist in the 8th inning. I mean, I don't know how many times I can tell you there's a guy that is late on a fastball, just rockets one into the upper deck on a fastball, right-handed batter, right? And then they throw him an off-speed pitch.
Right, speed is bad.
So they speed up his bat.
Flip him.
What aren't you seeing? I mean, it's right in front, especially from a catcher's perspective. I mean, we sit there and talk about it, or I did talk about it with Mark Ubas, who's acutely aware of everything that's going on in a game. And we sit there and go, well, you gotta throw him another fastball here. You don't throw anything off speed. Off speed, bam, big hit, double, or whatever the case may be. Yeah. It's a shame. It really is. But until those numbers, it is strictly a guideline for how you should. This is how we're going to attack the game, right? Because it's all based on previous history. So if you've got a scouting report from an offensive perspective based on Justin Verlander being on the mound, well, Justin Verlander may not be that guy today. He may not have that fastball, so he's throwing a lot more sliders or cut fastballs. Whatever. The approach has to change. But if you keep going up there based on the previous history and not what's happening right here and now, you have no chance. And that's the unfortunate part about it. Look at Kevin Cash. What happened last year in the World Series with Blake Snell. Now the computer said he's got to come out. I'm sure Dave Roberts was sitting there going, I've been there, brother. It ain't happening this year for me. And sure enough, and it worked. Well, Dave Roberts has been there.
Vic,
you got to go with your gut instincts.
You know, Vic, to stay with that point, I remember tweeting out in the 4th inning, the Dodgers dugout wishes one thing, and it's that the Tampa Bay Rays play analytics. Because you know, Vic, you've been in that dugout when there's a guy on the mound. The only thing, you don't care if the best pitcher in the world is coming in after him. That guy, Snell, we can't hit. So whoever you bring in is going to make us happy. And that's exactly what happened.
You know what it's like when someone is just dominating and they get yanked. That dugout, your dugout's sitting going, hell yeah, thank you very much.
Yep, that's exactly what happened.
I'll take my chances.
It is. And Victor, are you sure you're still not working for the Angels? Because you got like some baseball gods thing going on behind
I
you.
wanted you guys
like
to feel the presence.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the Ballnine final thoughts. And I am going to go around starting to my left with Victor Rojas coming at you from baseball heaven, from Iowa. They're neutering the players. That's what
I
they're
think
doing.
I think you're just I think ultimately you're just going to cause more confusion. You're going to get a guy that goes from A ball to double A and, might get confused on something or a guy gets from double A to A ball and doesn't realize that he can't throw over more than 2 times. Otherwise it's considered only if you don't retire the batter, it's considered a balk. The disengaging of the rubber, I don't understand. And yet through it all, the spaghetti move or spin move for a pitcher to second base is still okay. That still is mind-boggling to me. I think, look, when the masses continue to say why, that's usually your answer. Why are we tinkering with the game? Why are we doing this? And the amazing thing is that Theo was the one that was doing, because I was on that when he announced all the moves and the ideas for these changes. Major League Baseball's brought in Ken Griffey Jr., has brought in Raul Ibanez, and former players that have impact, stature in the game. Those are the guys that need to step up and say, this is silly. What are we doing? And I remember Billy Ripken when I was at MLB Network talking about some of the things that they'd like to try and screw around with it, Ripken baseball, to try to make the game more engaging. That's not making the game more engaging. You're just pissing more people off. And I hope that it's temporary. That's what I'm hoping for.
I agree with you. Kevin, I'm going to go to you.
Yeah, I think the only answer here is for teams to have the guts to fight back and play baseball and do things like baseball. I see a little bit of that happening with certain teams. They're hitting the ball the other way more. And I want to see the rules keep changing and the idiots keep making more ridiculous rules because it shows them to be real idiots. I want to shine a spotlight on these guys, and I want to leave it with this. I think the media's got to step it up. The media's got to question these guys instead of just tagging along and saying, here's these great new rules. We got to get a voice back in the game. I think this is about control. I think in some ways, not to get political here, but in some ways, the same things that are happening in the country with certain things are happening in baseball now. If you don't clean it up now, baseball, I think they just hired a guy that used to be with WWF or something, WWE. And I think baseball is going to become WWE baseball. It's not going to be fun. It's going to be a niche sport, and it's going to be on Manfred. And here's what I say to Rob Manfred. Your legacy is going to be you were a joke.
So, Rocco, I'm going to go to you now on this. Your final thought.
It's 2 things. I think the way baseball is going to change is, like we said, it's a copycat league. I thought that 2014-15 Royals team, that hit and run, that put the ball in play, that ran the bases and played defense, I thought teams might start modeling after that, but they didn't have the extended consistency there. I just think it falls back down to the game policing itself, and that's something that doesn't happen anymore. Used to be a batter was up there on his own. If he saw a hole that he knew he could hit, he'd go the other way, or he'd hit a gap or do something like that. Now it's like something we talk about a lot on this. The game has become so stupid that common sense is removed. And, now you're putting in rules to try to govern things where that used to be governed by the players themselves through their performance. So that's I'd like to see that come back, where the players start thinking for themselves a little bit more. on the field. That's what made it exciting. You didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah. And now, unfortunately, it's pretty much one of three things. So, Wes, I'm going to go to you for your final thought here and what you think of all of this and what can be done, if anything can be done.
Well, I think a lot of the reasoning behind a lot of these things is for them apparently to attract more fans to the game. Ironically, what they've done is separate and alienate the masses of the fans that supported the game for decades and decades. But I would ask, the panel here, if Ricky Henderson was playing right now, if Willie McGee was playing right now, if Vince Coleman was playing right now, if Whitey Herzog's club was playing right now, would you want to watch them play every inning? The answer is yes. We know that. We know that you would. And so, it gets to a point, there's nothing wrong with the game, the same game that has been with us for centuries. It's how they're telling you or not allowing you how to play the game anymore that is where we're at now. But to create new rules to fix the game, that there's nothing wrong with the game at all. We just don't get to see what we used to see for a century. It's just that simple. And if you think about the Astros, when Lunau went over there, and then when they won it, when they were so elite, this panel understands this, but the writers like Kevin are the few and far between that will call this out. They don't sniff getting deep in the playoffs if they don't trade for Verlander. They don't sniff getting there. He was the reason they won. He was the reason. Cole, they did that the following year. So, that's the reason. It had nothing to do with a computer. It had to do with Verlander. That's what it had to do. He made the difference. But I'll leave you with this. There are a lot on social media that would say, old man screaming at the cloud, get off my lawn. And I will say this, and I don't want to speak on behalf of everybody here, but I think I am safe in saying this. The only reason we care is because we love this game to death. We want to protect the history of this great game that has been passed from one generation to the next. We want to protect the history. We want to protect the players that were stellar at what they did, using different baseballs when they hit. We want to protect this game. And that's why we do what we do. And we were raised that when you see something wrong, open your mouth. Yeah. I'll leave it with that.
Well, that's great. I mean, MLB is doing a hell of a job fixing what isn't broken, or trying to fix what isn't broken, and sticking their little fingers in everything and getting them dirty. And our ombudsman, Rocco Constantino, who likes to tell us what we screwed up every week. Rocco, take it away, brother.
Yeah, nothing really to report on today. A lot of opinion-based show, but I do have the name. The WWE person that was hired by MLB is Brian Stedman. He's been hired as the executive vice president of strategy and development. Another created position. That would have been an awesome, I'm fine for people can think outside of the box. I support that, but how about hiring a former player there, or even a minority player? Something Vic talked about, diversity right there. Instead of hiring somebody from the WWE, why don't you give it to a real baseball player?
I like it. Well, gentlemen,
that's all I got, though. I have no other corrections.
That's it?
That's it.
Well, that's the first that you only had one, so I like it.
Well, that's the first for me, but trust me, anytime the camera's on me.
Kevin got on you enough for that.
That is
dead. Don't worry, there'll be plenty more chances. Yeah. But gentlemen, I want to thank you all for coming on, taking a few minutes. Victor, Kevin, Rocco, Wes, thank you guys so much. We love the game. We hope to see it fixed. But until then, we're going to keep doing what we do. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And guys, thanks for coming on.
Enjoyed it, guys.
Thanks, fellas.
Right, guys.
Vic, if you could see it, that's exactly
It's
what it
crazy.
Oh,
looks like.
I can see. I can see it. I was trying to move my screen a little bit. Yeah, you
Just
go this
leave it.
way. It just follows me everywhere.
It's great.
It's gold.
I
It is.
apologize. And I
That's-
normally
this
don't do it
is-
here either. Sorry.
It's just the beauty of
Oh,
baseball.
my bad.